Hi, I'm Mark, and unfortunately, today we have to talk about the chaos that is happening within the SNP, the Scottish National Party. The campaign to replace Nicola Sturgeon as leader of the Scottish National Party and as Scotland's First Minister has been engulfed in chaos that has led to the resignation of two senior SNP figures in just 24 hours. After a good 8 years in office and numerous electoral successes, Sturgeon announced her retirement in mid-February. The politician, who is known for excellent political communication, brought up personal motives. In reality, however, a highly controversial new transsexual law and the internal dispute over the best strategy for Scotland's independence may also have been decisive. Since Sturgeon's surprising announcement, the internal contradictions that have been known for a long time have been revealed in the nationalist camp, but until now they have largely been hidden by iron discipline. First and foremost, it was the goal of detachment from the United Kingdom, to which Scotland has belonged since 1707. The result of the 2014 referendum, 55 to 45% for the Union, should actually last for a generation, as the Brexiteers always said. And since Brexit, against which 62% of Scots voted, the nationalists have been agitating for a second vote, which the Conservative central government in London under Prime Minister Rishi Sunak strictly rejects. As a result, Sturgeon, who was considered a cautious tactician, was increasingly under pressure from daredevils inside and outside the SNP. Most recently, she wanted to convert the lower house election, which is due in 2024, into a shadow referendum. This dubious idea should be off the table with her resignation. A good week before the successor to First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is to be clarified, the Scottish National Party SNP is in shambles. The press secretary and general secretary had to take their hats for persistent lies about the membership of what is by far the most powerful group in Edinburgh. And meanwhile, the opposition's three rivals for party leadership and highest government office are providing wonderful ammunition with fierce mutual accusations. Peter Murrell, husband of outgoing Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, has resigned from a key party position in the Scottish National Party SNP. The PA news agency reported that the resignation as chief executive was effected immediately. Murrell was reportedly facing a no-confidence vote. And early on Friday, SNP media chief Murray Food resigned after a dispute over the party's membership. The SNP did not want to give the number to the media. Responsibility for responding to media inquiries rests with him, as Murrell said, according to the PA. He actually only wanted to resign after the ongoing vote on the successor to his wife Nicola Sturgeon, but now took the step forward, according to Murrell. This allows the party to focus fully on Scotland's future. There had also been criticism because, as Secretary General, he was supposed to monitor the upcoming election of the regional head of government. One of the candidates for the office had accused him of a conflict of interest because of his marriage to Sturgeon. In recent years, the grumbling of all those who were dissatisfied with what they call Stalinist approach of the party leadership has grown louder and louder. The criticism was directed less against the chairman than against the general secretary or the chief executive. Peter Murrell has occupied this role of the most important administrator since the turn of the century. The gifted mastermind was instrumental in turning the insignificant regional party into the third most important political grouping in the country, with 45 seats in London's House of Commons and a very small opposition in Scottish Parliament. So that's, or they had 5 seats before in a minor role, and now they have 45 MPs and almost the majority of seats in Edinburgh, with hundreds of local seats. And the party, which has been in power for 16 years, has dominated Scotland's politics. But decisions were increasingly being made by a small cabal with Sturgeon and Murrell at its heart. And there's no wonder. The couple has been in a private relationship for a long time and have been married since 2010. The events of the past few weeks have shown that the power couple's power leads to mistakes. The party leadership made it all too clear that they saw Health Minister Hamza Yousaf as their favorite. The media should remain excluded from this internal party rounds of introductions with the other two applicants, Treasury Secretary Kate Forbes and former Secretary of State for Justice Ash Regan. And that's an absurd idea that was soon withdrawn. On the other hand, for weeks it remained a guesswork about the independence of the electoral process and the number of eligible voters. The party leadership continually lied to the media, claiming that there were a good 100,000 SNP members. At the end of last week, the correct numbers came to light. While more than 125,000 Scots still had the membership card in 2019, the number had recently fallen to 72,186 people. And party spokesman Murray Foot immediately resigned, as I said. And in Morell's case, the board first had to threaten a vote of no confidence before what we in Germany would call a string puller resigned on Saturday. Michael Russell, who is now temporarily managing the SNP business, spoke of a huge mess. Some observers in Edinburgh are already having doubts that the election process will properly lead to a result on Monday. In polls, Forbes and Yousaf were ahead. The election of their cabinet colleague would be a program of mediocrity, believes the 32-year-old who has repeatedly accused the other of his unsuccessful government work in various departments. Forbes has been heavily criticized for her worldview. A member of a free church said she thinks sex outside of marriage and abortions are wrong. However, she would defend the applicable laws, including same-sex marriage. She said, "I firmly believe in the inherent dignity of every human being." How far we can believe her, we might see. Whoever succeeds the long unchallenged Sturgeon is still open. The opposition parties in Scotland are predictably having a fun day with the turmoil in the ruling party, especially during a leadership election campaign that has thrown a spotlight on policy divisions within the SNP, and when contenders have traded sharp barbs during televised debates. The leader of Scottish Labour, Anna Savard, released a statement on Saturday saying, "While the SNP are in turmoil, we are relentlessly focused on delivering the change Scotland needs." The SNP are in turmoil and distracted by their own priorities. Frankly, Scotland deserves better than this, is what Savard, who is an SNP from Glasgow, also wrote. Meanwhile, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Douglas Ross, said the resignation of Morell is just the latest development in this SNP civil war. But while the nationalists tear themselves apart, the real priorities of Scotland continue to be forgotten, the Highlands MP said, although his party is quite insignificant in Scotland at the moment. Meanwhile, the candidates to be Scotland's next leader have been having their say. Kate Forbes tweeted that only she can restore trust in party governance. Ash Regan said 8 years ago was the point where it was unacceptable to have the husband of the party leader as the CEO. And while Hamza Yousaf hadn't yet responded to Morell's resignation, on Friday night he wrote, "Reform of our HQ operations has been a key part of my campaign." The Scottish First Minister is the head of the Scottish government, and I want to talk about how it's selected, in what specific process in a normal way, because there are some steps to become the Scottish First Minister. The Scottish First Minister is chosen by the members of the Scottish Parliament, the MSPs, who are elected by the Scottish people in general elections held every 5 years. After the elections, MSPs meet and nominate candidates for the position of First Minister. Any MSP can be nominated, but the candidate must have the support of at least 1/5 of all MSPs. The Scottish Parliament then votes on the nomination, and the candidate who receives the support of the majority of MSPs is appointed as First Minister. Once the First Minister is appointed, they must form a government. They appoint cabinet ministers, who are also MSPs, to form the Scottish government. Approval must come from the Scottish Parliament, though. The Scottish Government must be approved by a vote of confidence in the Scottish Parliament. If the government fails to win a vote of confidence, the First Minister must resign. It's important to note that the First Minister of Scotland is not directly elected by the Scottish people. That's why we have this process at the moment, because it's rather appointed by the Scottish Parliament. However, the Scottish people do indirectly have a say in who becomes First Minister by electing MSPs to the Scottish Parliament, which has not happened this time, though, because now the SNP will decide who that will be, but they will also have to talk to the Greens, for example, for the later vote in Parliament, because they were very, very, very close, but they didn't get their own absolute majority in Parliament at the last elections. But it was that close. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.